Trees are one of nature's blessings. They provide shade to cool us and food for our tables. They shelter songbirds, absorb pollution, and give off oxygen. Trees add value to our property and beautify our city. Because of their potential for long life, trees frequently are planted as living memorials. And even though trees may be on private property, their size makes them a community asset. Properly cared for, a tree will provide decades of enjoyment. Unfortunately, poor care, and especially the practice known as tree topping, can shorten their life by leaving them with weak and rotting limbs. That's why Winston-Salem's new tree ordinance prohibits tree topping. I'm Keith Finch, the urban forester for the city of Winston-Salem. Spend a few minutes with me and I'll prove to you that topping is about the worst thing you can do to a tree, and I'll show you the proper way to prune a tree. This is an all too common sight in Winston-Salem. For whatever reason, someone decided that this tree was too big, so they lopped off all the branches. In a few years, it will look like this. Lots of small branches are growing out where the branches were chopped off. It gives the tree a nice full look, and at a glance, the tree appears to have recovered and is none the worse. But looks can be deceiving, especially if you're on the ground looking up at a tree. From up here, you get a different picture. This limb was topped, cut in half 6 or 7 years ago. What happened on this limb is they cut it in half to decrease the length of it. They didn't cut it at a proper area at the branch collar, so what it did, it sent out emergency signals to the tree that something was wrong. And in turn, the tree sent out all these limbs to make energy because it was afraid something was shutting down and there were problems. So we started out with one large branch. Now we have 10 times as many limbs. And since it wasn't cut in a correct area at the branch collar, it had no way of defending itself and forming woundwood. And after 6 or 7 years, you can see the rot that's left inside. And by this stick, we can poke through here and see it goes quite the length down this limb. So this tree is going to grow back to the same height and the same spread as we had before with 10 times more limbs, and now there's not enough tree to keep those safe as we had with the regular limb. So we're going to lose limbs due to breakage and still end up with the same spread and height as what we started with. Here's an example of not only was it cut in the wrong place, but instead of cutting the limb off properly where it falls flush away, they let it fall and it split. And when it did, it tore the wood off. Here you notice where the tree tried to form wound wood to seal it, but in this case it couldn't. And so we have a decay column now that's not only stops right here where you can see, but comes through the limb also. Unfortunately, tree topping happens all too often. People say the tree is too full or too tall, or they don't want branches hanging over their house. Some people tree top because they want the tree to branch out more. This happens a lot with crepe myrtles, and a lot of people feel like this increases the blooms. But they don't realize that when they do this, they are dooming these beautiful trees to a premature death. As we learned in 5th grade science class, trees need leaves for photosynthesis and for energy. When you take those limbs off, the tree uses all its energy just to make more leaves. So instead of it growing and producing the blooms that it should be, the energy is used to get it back to a state where it can survive. As you look in these pictures here, here's proof of what happens to crepe myrtles when they've been topped and those that are pruned in the way they should be. And as you look through these series of photographs, you can see that the trees that are pruned as they should be have bloomed much more prolifically than those that have been topped. Tree topping is never good for the tree. It's not just me saying that. There are plenty of studies that have been done that prove the fact that tree topping leads to decay and instability in a tree. And once this process is started, it's very hard to undo. Proper pruning can address all of the conditions that cause people to top their trees. And with proper pruning, you can selectively remove branches and even reduce the height of the tree without topping. Proper pruning starts by knowing how trees grow. If you take this limb here, one of the keys to proper pruning is staying just outside of the branch collar. In this case, the branch collar runs here. Anytime you're pruning, you want to cut just outside of this branch collar without leaving a stub. When you do that, the tree's able to form wound wood, and then it seals that. If you cut this limb like it is and you cut outside the branch collar now, when this limb falls, it's going to split and it's going to tear. So we want to do it in a way that that's not going to happen. The proper way to take this limb off, or any limb of this size and larger, is to make a cut underneath and then come on top on the inside of that cut, take this limb part off, and then come back and cut just outside of the branch collar. That keeps the limb from splitting, and it enables you to make a proper cut so wound wood will form. If you get inside of this branch collar, the tree's not able to stop the spread of decay, and the decay spreads up inside the tree. Another major issue that people face, which leads them to topping, is what to do when a limb is too long. And normally they think to take care of that situation, they cut it back halfway and they don't make proper cuts, and the tree doesn't have the energy to form the wound wood. In a case like this, when we have a limb that's lengthy, you can reduce a certain extent of that limb by making a proper cut. And what you want to do is cut it back to a lateral limb like we have here. The lateral limb should be about 2/3 the size of the limb you're cutting off. You do that so there's enough energy in this limb to seal that wound and to form wound wood. So if we were to take this, cut this limb off here, remove that, we've decreased the length of it, and we also have cut it in a place where the tree can form wound wood and there won't be decay. So it can be done properly. A lot of people, when they cut back, they'll cut back to a lateral that's not big enough. If we were to cut back here, this limb would probably not have enough energy to seal that off, and then we would end up with decay. If you want to reduce the height of a tree, make slanting cuts just above branches that are at least 2/3 the thickness of the branch you are cutting. The branch will become the new leader. And remember, it's never a good idea to remove more than 25% of a tree's canopy at any one time. The best time to do pruning is in the winter. The next best time is in the middle of the summer. In the spring, when the trees are putting on the leaves and flowering, and in the fall when the leaves are shutting down, are two times you should avoid, unless there's hazardous limbs. You can also remove dead limbs and diseased limbs and decayed limbs at any time. Trees can serve and beautify our community for generations. All it takes is a little care and remembering the right way to prune.